Welcome to Joe's Place, the Joe Giannotti podcast. Today's guest is a board-certified doctor in integrative medicine and a doctor of chiropractic and Ayurvedic medicine and an Ayurvedic yoga therapist, as well as a certified Hatha yoga master teacher. She has been in private practice in Beverly Hills, California, in the field of holistic medicine, a health and wellness expert, author and speaker with more than 25 years of hands-on clinical experience. When she speaks, hearts open and minds are inspired. It is my honor to have as today's guest, Dr. Atousa Mahdavi. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of Joe's Place, the Joe Giannotti podcast. I am your host, Joe Giannotti. I am today, and for the past few episodes, I've also been streaming aside from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm also streaming live on Clubhouse, which is an outstanding app, and I also have a Joe's Place room that I have different variety of episodes on there, and I've met a whole bunch of incredible people in the past few weeks, and I greatly thank them for joining me in the audience today. And it is a great honor to have as today's guest, holistic health expert, speaker, and best-selling author. She is a best-selling author of part of the book of The Expert's Cure, which was on the Wall Street Journal, Amazon, and USA Today best-selling list. I want to welcome in Dr. Atousa Mahdavi. Dr. Mahdavi, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Joe. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And this is a topic. One of the topics that I would like to talk about on Joe's Place has been just overall health. At one point in my life, I weighed nearly 500 pounds. I've lost 250 pounds without surgery, just, sweat, more sweat. But it requires more than that to lose the weight. It's not just basic eating. It's not just exercise. It's part of it. Mm-hmm. However, you also have to be in the right frame of mind. Mm-hmm. Not just in a physical and mental aspect, but also in a spiritual and a holistic health aspect. And this is a topic I'm not really too familiar with. So please, for the audience, I want you to explain what is your specialty and what is the topic of holistic health?
Okay. Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. So when we look at health and wellness from the holistic, well, let me backtrack. So I started as a chiropractor, doctor of chiropractic medicine. And once I started practicing, I was seeing a lot of patients, obviously for pain, chronic, acute, different conditions, musculoskeletal, neuromusculoskeletal conditions. But they would also come to me and they would have other chronic ailments like diabetes, hypertension, autoimmune diseases, digestive issues like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, etc. And so pretty soon I realized that I needed more tools in my toolbox to be able to help them as well. So I went and I basically got certified in functional medicine, which is a way of practicing holistic medicine. And then a few years down the line, I got certified in integrative medicine. And so what is holistic medicine? Well, holistic medicine is basically based on the principle that health and disease is not something that you approach only from one angle. It is not basically a cookie cutter approach. It's not one size fits all, but it is basically based on an approach that looks at your life from different angles. It's not just about, okay, you have high cholesterol, let me give you this pill, because that is a symptom-based approach. That's a sick care approach. And basically, it's about, are you diagnosed with something or not? And once you're diagnosed with a condition, in conventional medicine, which is not holistic, they basically treat that symptom, mask the symptomology, and basically forget about the cause. In holistic medicine, it's not that you're only healthy in the absence of disease condition. You're not necessarily healthy if there is no diagnosis, but it is based on a spectrum of, okay, if you're not diagnosed with anything, are you feeling well and healthy? Do you have the same energy as you had a few years ago, as you were a little bit younger? Are you sleeping as well as you should? Are you joyful? Can you get your tasks done in a day without getting completely exhausted? Are you motivated? Are you setting goals and a purpose for your life? Does your life have a meaning? If you look at this whole perspective, you see that the paradigm completely shifts from a sick care, a cookie cutter. You're either diagnosed with something or not. You're either showing a lot of abnormalities on your blood work or not. And if you are, then let's give you some pills and take care of it. Now, in holistic medicine, we look at your totality. What is your life made of? Well, you for sure have a body, and a body is an amalgamation of chemistry and chemicals. You definitely have a mind, because when you think about it, people that are stressed out, and we know that stress is one of the number one cause of doctor's visits is stress related.
Wow.
The majority of chronic conditions are stress related, and stress is one of the main risk factors, including heart disease, including diabetes. And so stress is something that, even though it may manifest in the body after some time, but starts in the mind. So you have a mind. So what's going on there? What keeps you from having a sound sleep at night? What keeps you away from going to the gym and getting that exercise regimen regularly? What is stopping you from that motivation of getting your life in order? What stops you from reading that book that you've always wanted to read? What makes you want to um, mm, not do anything, succumb to a depressive mode? What makes you depressed? And if you look at it, there is such a sort of connection and correlation between your mind and your health that even the conventional medicine today does not deny it. By acknowledging that stress is one of the main causes of ailments, stress is in the mind. And so that's the mind. Let
It's
me finish.
also one thing I'm sorry, one thing that I've noticed is that stress also exacerbates illnesses in general, even basic upper respiratory infections.
Often.
There was a recent study about, I'll go to COVID, since that's been the topic.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, one of the main exasperators of COVID is stress and anxiety.
Yes,
Obesity, of
absolutely.
course, was number one, but strangely enough, number two, number I think it was on the number two or number three,
Yeah.
was stress and anxiety.
You're absolutely right. And the mechanics of that, the science behind that has to do with stress causing your stress hormone or cortisol to go up. Whenever cortisol levels go up in the body, your immune system is suppressed. And we know that. We've known that it's scientifically a proven fact. And so whenever you're stressed out, the stress hormone, which is called cortisol, it goes up. Once that goes up, your good feeling hormones are suppressed, but also your immune cells are suppressed, your white blood cells are suppressed. And we know that. And if you're, let's say, sick with COVID, if you have a very stress-free life, chances are that stress is not there, so it's not going to exacerbate it. Your recovery is going to be much faster than, let's say, someone who's really living a stressful life. So it's definitely an absolute truth that even in acute situations, if someone is more stressed out, that makes their situation a lot worse.
Yeah.
And
Without question. And there are ways that me personally, I mean, I've dealt with, I'll be blunt. When you weigh almost 500 pounds, there is something, inside you that is just completely out of balance. It's
mhm,
not all just eating and weight. I've had
mhm,
deep depression,
yeah,
terrible anxiety, and I still do with COVID. I really do.
yeah,
But one thing I did was I dropped 100 pounds during the pandemic.
mhm,
I
wonderful.
first hit, what happened was back in 2013, that was my peak weight. So I then lost 180 pounds in a year. But what happens is when you lose so much weight, you hit what they call the mental brick wall, which is very, very common among people who are so morbidly obese. And so naturally, I have to see a psychologist, and I have to have psychologist appointments all the time on a weekly or every 2 week basis because of the massive weight loss, because everything internally is completely changing. It's going from a
Mhm,
complete 180
mhm,
from one thing to another thing. And I'm
mhm,
still that same person. There are days that I still feel like I'm still that 472-pound man.
mhm,
So one thing that I do is to calm my anxiety and stress is I play meditation music. I play,
mhm.
in particular, spa meditation music, which just seems just so calming and peaceful.
Very much so. Yeah.
And what are some basic ways, aside from music, to
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
calm a person that is either in a high stress position, high stress job, or is dealing with a lot of high stress because of something that may have happened to them as a child or young adult, something that has occurred, a loss of a job. Of course, now with these mandates, people are worried that they're going to lose their jobs based on, they're given a choice, either vaccine or your job. And
Mhm.
people are very anxious about that. So what are some basic
Very
ways that people could just calm down,
Yeah,
lower their stress levels, and just
yeah.
have just an inner peace with themselves with all the chaos going on?
Yes, which brings me to this other side of the triangle of health. So the triangle of health is body, mind. We already talked about that, and spirit. And so spirit, which is something that it's not tangible for most people, and they're like, okay, I can relate to my mind because I have anxiety or I have stress or I have depression, etc., or I have self-destructive behavior, I have anger, I have grief, I have unresolved grief, etc. um, Spirit, it's about, in reality, having a purpose in life. And it seems like in the 21st century, even in the 20th century, um, in this postmodern, fast-paced world that we live in, um, people have lost their connection with their inner self and with the sense of purpose and a meaning in their life. In fact, there is a book, Man in Search of Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which I read probably 25 years ago. And it talks about the Auschwitz and the camps in Auschwitz. And the people who survived it were people who always held on to hope and faith and love
In the most difficult of times.
in the
And
most difficult of times. And in the same scenario that, let's say, their buddy or their friend in the camp was facing the same kind of lack of food, the same kind of that tyrannical control over them, and basically hard work, etc., that the ones that would usually survive it, according to Viktor Frankl's observations and perception, was that they were people that still wouldn't lose hope, that they still had faith in humanity, they still had faith in some other power or force or energy outside of them. And they wouldn't succumb to hopelessness. They wouldn't lose their faith to this the destiny that is dark and it's basically diabolic, that there is no light at the end of the tunnel. So the other aspect of us is our spirit, and it has to do with what you cultivate in your life as a purpose. Does your life have a purpose, or do you simply just wake up, go to work, and go through your chores and take care of your family things and children and this and that, and then one day you find yourself not really having enjoyment in your life because you feel like you're on this redundant routine that keeps repeating, and it's almost like a rat race. And those who become aware of it, that they have lost their sense of enjoyment because their life no longer has a purpose, and they're just going to this work, maybe they're an engineer, maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're a teacher, maybe they're a computer guy, but having that sense of purpose and believing, having faith and hope and trust in some energy. I don't, I can use the word God, but I also know that it doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be God. It can be just your absolute trust and faith in humanity as a whole. And if you're like, let's say right now we're in this scenario and situation, and the rate of suicide is so high amongst the youth. It's actually become the number one cause of death amongst children from the age of 8 to 15 is suicide since last year. Why? Because they have no hope. The future looks so bleak to them. It looks so hopeless, as if nobody is going to come and save them, because they still haven't cultivated that trust and faith in themselves, because perhaps they still haven't been in situations to pull themselves out of a bad situation, to cultivate confidence in themselves, cultivate trust in their own being, in the sense of their higher self, to pull them out of this. So that is one of the most important aspects of your status of health, your health status. How are you spiritually? And that doesn't mean you have to be this woo-woo, whatever, spiritual person. It just means, have you found something in this universe that you can give yourself to 100, totally and fully give your trust? And that when you wake up, at the end of the day, everything works together for your good. That the entire universe at the end of the day wants you to win. That you weren't born as someone that is bound to be controlled by circumstances, but rather you're a creator. So
the intangible. Essentially, this is the intangible of this is how you live a long life. And if you look at all of those, and I have plenty of family members that have lived to their mid 80s and 90s. And in every single case, you look at their lives, and it's the intangible of the power of positive thinking. I'll bring up the Norman Vincent Peale book, The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and there is something to be said about positive thinking, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. Because if you become aware of that constant voice in your head that is your voice, and you identify as your voice and as the true factual conversation you're having with yourself about things, places, events, past, future, etc., that you take that voice so seriously, and you think that that is you, but rather that is a vibrational repetition of years of conditioning by your parents, your environment, your friends, your schools, your teachers, your media, your culture, digital media, that it's constantly conditioning you, programming you, and is creating this vibrational activity that we call thought. And your thoughts, you take it so seriously. And when you're speaking to yourself and you're thinking, why am I not ever getting this right? Why can I do this? Why am I so this? Why am I so weak? Why this? Why, my whole world is crumbling now. Nobody loves me. I'm not lovable. When you listen to those voices in your head, and okay, we want to call it negative thoughts, negative emotions. Okay, replace it with positive thought, positive emotion. Yes, but it is much more beyond a positive thought.
Right.
Those words are affirmations that affirm to you what your future, what destiny can look like. And if you keep repeating those affirmations, those mantras that are self-hypnotizing you to believing that you're this powerless, out of control, poor me, or victim, or succumb to the environment that you live in, etc., then obviously you're going to operate from that reality. So it goes way beyond and above positive thinking. It is really about, what do you choose to believe and tell yourself? How would you lace your thoughts? What would you lace your thoughts with? With sweet, loving words that give you confidence and self-love and trust and faith and hope and love? Or do you lace your thoughts and emotions with, I'm bad, I'm not lovable, I'm weak, I can't do this, da la la la, not good enough, da la la la, my parents, my this, my past? Which empowers you? Which empowers you? So it's not about, oh, your positive thoughts are immediately going to manifest in, if I think it long enough about $1 million, it's going to show up at my door.
No.
It's not about that.
No.
But unfortunately, with some of the new age, spirituality and that kind of a thing, there is so much about manifesting as you think. There is truth to that, but it's not about, you just think about $1 million and it's going to show up. It's about, or positive thinking did that. It's about, what are your thoughts doing to you? Are they empowering you, or are they taking your power away and
Damaging you.
giving rise to anxiety, depression, and self-doubt?
I want to bring up Leopold, my friend Leopold, brought up in the chat about a Scientific American piece that just came out in August. This was second week of August, and I'm actually going to bring it up on the screen. And I don't know if you have read this piece, but it seemed it's and I'm going to read it in a moment. It is titled, "What God, Mechanics, and Consciousness Have in Common. Theories that try to explain these big metaphysical mysteries fall short, making agnosticism the only sensible stance." And I just want to get your thoughts. If you've read the piece, and two, again, the intangible being involved about, God, quantum mechanics, consciousness, all being.
Yes. So I haven't read that particular piece, but I have read it, in my own mind and understanding and intuitive knowledge. I know that is true. I know that is true. And, what is in quantum physics is the spiritual side of science. Quantum physics looks at everything that the spiritual looks at, only that quantum physics is using scientific terminology for it, and the laws of physics and the laws of mechanics. And so, in fact, I have a book coming up. It's called Holy You. That's my upcoming book. It's going to be on Amazon soon. And in that, my first chapter is about body, mind, spirit, and I do bring in quantum physics in there, and how quantum physics actually really is parallel to what the spiritual, or some of the religions, or most of the religions, not as an organized manner, but as the basis for religion, have been saying. That all is a quantum field of consciousness vibrating as a quantum energy field of vibration in a hyperlink soup of connectivity that connects all to one source of energy, and that nothing is separate from the other in this quantum field of consciousness. And that is what Einstein, what brought Einstein to actually be a spiritual being and talk about God, and basically his faith in God and a higher consciousness. Because the more you study quantum physics, the more you understand that there has to be a design. There has to be an all-knowing consciousness that is a universal intelligence that has given rise to creation, which you are a part of. That creator, you are a creator. And if you look at the words of Jesus, he say, or was it Prophet Muhammad, that God is closer to the vein in your neck than, like, it's that close to you, and yeah, so I love that, you brought into quantum physics, because even one interesting observation in quantum physics was the experiment that was the double-blind, what was it? The double splint study that basically it was meant to determine whether light travels as a wave or as a particle, right? So they wanted to know if light is a wave, it's a wave, or it's particles. Okay, so they did this double splint study in which it was really interesting. And in fact, the late physicist that just passed away, he had Lou Gehrig's disease, that passed away a couple of years ago. He also talked about it, that I forgot his name, but he had Lou Gehrig, and he would speak to he would have with his fingers, he couldn't even speak, but he would use his fingers with a Morse-like thing, and then the computer would translate that to Stephen Hawking. Very good, thank you. He talked about this, and it was one of the bases of his observations, the double splint, which was the basis of this observation, that when the scientists set up their experiment to look at light as a wave, it would behave as a wave. But when they set up to study it as a particle, it would behave as a particle. So they said it all depends on the observer. How is the observer looking at the universe? Are you looking at the universe from the lens of pessimistic, and everything is going to go to, bad, like crap, excuse my French? Or are you looking from the lens of, ultimately, even if my now doesn't look so promising, but ultimately all things will work for my benefit or will come together to support me. If you establish yourself from a perspective of an observer that distance itself himself or herself from what is going on and just look at it as an observer, then your field of vision will expand. Your field of vision will expand, and suddenly you could see so much more that you weren't able to see when you were just looking at this tunnel vision, all this bad stuff, all this bad news, all this negativity. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're looking from, still you're looking at this limited lens or perspective. But when you allow yourself to distance yourself and look at a little bit of a broader perspective, then suddenly this field of possibility expands. And that is one thing that, unfortunately, I think the youth that are just killing themselves in despair are not able to do for themselves, is to get out of that lens that you've been honing on with the social media stuff. And who knows what the social media, digital. Yeah. And apparently the algorithms will just look at what you're looking at and give you more of that, feed you more of that. And
makes you robotic.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make you human. And that's one great problem with artificial intelligence is, as I said, this is the entire intangible of mind, body, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Modern medicine has been so great in the past century with just the different developments of in each individual field.
Mm-hmm.
Cardiology, cardiology, gastroenterology, just all the different medical fields. Modern medicine has been an incredible thing. However, there's one thing that has taken a little bit of a back burner, and it's because of devices like computerized devices and people essentially becoming robotic in so many ways. I mean, I'm kind of guilty of it myself, and I'll be the first to admit, is that people going back to mind, body, and spirit, which is the oldest form of medicine. It has worked 2,000 years ago. It has worked, which is why you hear stories about people living well into their 90s and 100s. Okay. From back in the days of the Bible with Moses, for example. And then there's those that in the darkest of times, they have overcome because of mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. See, you really need to have faith in something, have hope in something. And if you lose all of that, see, it's really interesting because the law of success, there is a book by Napoleon Hill.
I know the book you're talking about because I believe I own it and I have not read it. Let me bring it up. Let me bring the book up. I know exactly what you're talking about. It is Napoleon
Hill.
I believe it's Napoleon Hill, right?
Yeah, Napoleon Hill. Yeah.
It's not the one Think and Grow Rich, but it's
actually it is. It is.
Well, there's two of them. There's Think and Grow Rich, and there's the Law of Success.
The Law of Success. I believe it's the Law of Success, actually. Or maybe I have both, and I have read both books many, many years ago. So now, what I'm trying to refill, it is in one of those books, either The Law of Success or Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And when he talks about the subconscious mind, he talks about how when you try to create the life that you envision for yourself, that something beautiful you want to create, whatever it is. And success to many people means different things. It doesn't have to be the same thing. It doesn't have to be a bunch of money, a bunch of houses, and a bunch of, things like that, material things. It could be anything that you want to create that is bringing you joy, that is your purpose in this life, etc. He actually talked about, he's written about these emotions of love, hope, and faith as some of the strongest emotions that have to do with success and attracting riches, whatever that means. Riches may be, attracting the love of your life, attracting money, attracting the business that, whatever it is, right? And what is someone in despair, self-destructive, suicide, etc., is lacking is exactly these emotions: love, hope, and faith. So how do you cultivate faith? And why is it that people who have faith are less fearful than people who do not really have faith in anything? And we're not saying just have faith in God. Have faith in your own capabilities. Have faith in the goodness of humanity,
Have faith in
nature.
anything positive.
Yeah,
Have faith in anything positive.
positive. And that is a commodity that is so scarce in today's world. Faith, hope. And then are we surprised why an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old is killing themselves? I mean, where is humanity going? They're going through this path, lonely path of their best friend is a digital gadget,
Right.
and lonely path of hopelessness, faithlessness, and no real love.
Right. And
And
it's just so tragic and sad what during this pandemic, what we've done to our children.
yeah, yes, yeah, and interestingly enough, I mean, it's a good news, but interestingly enough, no school shootings, but they're killing themselves.
Right.
There are no
I mean,
school.
it's so sad. Right. But that is the one piece of good news of no school shootings.
Yeah, but they are still harming themselves, right?
Right.
So the fact that we have a generation of youth that feel like they don't have a future is an alarming pandemic. It's
It's
a
the
pandemic,
pandemic we're not talking about.
and we're
It's
not
going to
talking
end up
about.
being worse than the virus itself at the end
Yeah,
of the day.
because in that age range, they have 99.9% survivability.
Not even, no, more like 99.999. There's only, of 75 million children, there have been between 400 and 425 deaths. And
Yeah,
80 to 90% of those deaths are among those who had pre-existing conditions, had issues with their
of
immune
course,
system to begin with.
autoimmune diseases,
Right,
asthma, pulmonary
right.
conditions. Yeah,
Cancer of any kind.
cancer, of course, yes.
And so if you take that out, 65 children have died, which there are many more healthy children that have died from the flu that have died from COVID.
Yeah,
Not my numbers, the CDC's numbers.
yes.
And I want to switch. We talked about Napoleon Hill's book, but let's talk about the book that you have a chapter in, and that is on the Amazon bestseller list, Wall Street Journal bestseller list, USA Today bestselling book.
Mhm.
And that is, let me add that to the
Experts
stream,
cure.
The Expert's Cure. So, a couple questions. One, how were you contacted that to do a chapter in this book? And by the way, here's the topic: how entrepreneurs are changing the world. It's not just doctors, but
No.
it's other people that have either gone from low to high or have just had this mindset all along of just working hard, just focusing on a good mind, that they envision something fantastic down the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't just doctors. It wasn't just
right.
doctors. And so I was contacted. So I have a publisher for my own book, Holy You. So I was contacted last year during the height of the pandemic um, by the publisher, by my publisher, and he said that he wants to publish a book, uh, that is going to help humanity, in this crisis, and give them some, glimpse of hope, in these dark times, etc. And that he was looking for only 20 authors, and I was basically one of them that he reached out to. Um, and so the 20 authors, we each wrote one chapter, and it was published, if I'm not mistaken, it was
It's
published in March
yes,
or
that's
March.
right. It was
Yes,
I will February 25th, 2021 is the publishing date.
there we go. Exactly. And then in April, it hit most of these best-selling lists. Wall Street Journal. It sold 15,000 copies. It even got number 5 in nonfiction in Barnes and Noble. Number 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty good.
Yeah,
That is
nonfiction.
that is incredible. And the biography on the main author here, Rob Kosberg.
Yeah. He is the publisher.
He's the publisher.
He
Okay.
is the publisher. So when you publish a book on Amazon, there has to be a main name.
Okay.
And so that's why it looks like he's the main author. No, he also just wrote one chapter. But because he was the publisher, his name is the main name on Amazon, apparently.
And 4.8 out of 5 stars is extremely high for a book.
Yeah.
Extremely high. And congratulations to you and the other authors
Thank
for
you.
the incredible success of this book. And what I've done is scrolling on the bottom of the screen. If you want to get a link to Dr. Mahdavi's book, The Expert's Cure, her chapter, you can go to www.yourvitalitydoctor.com/free-e-book. And it's been scrolling the entire episode. So for those who want to get a copy of the free chapter, and I'm certainly going to not only read that this evening, but I intend to purchase the book. It's 180. It's about between 180. Let me see how many pages. Let me make sure I get the exact number right. It is 198 pages. It's almost 200 pages. And it really is just to talk about the different ways on being successful, and entrepreneurs. This is where we talk about there has been so much talk about the great resignation. The great resignation, because people are looking at how mortal they have become with COVID. Even though COVID is not deadly, it is deadly for certain groups of people. Mm-hmm. People have to be careful. Of course, I have brought up on numerous occasions that I have a pre-existing condition. I have chronic ITP or thrombocytopenia, and I have to be careful. I mean, I have to be careful with viruses themselves. I also have to be careful with vaccinations. Very much so. I mean, it's just par for the course. And everyone's given us, a different hand to deal with, and it's how you deal with that hand. It's how you deal with that hand is how you make your life. And so many people are saying, no, we're not gonna stay at our jobs that we're just miserable, that we've been miserable for years. We're gonna finally figure out and try to do our own thing and take a chance in life. And so it's it's not just a small group of people. Apparently, it's up to 30% of people in the workforce doing this. That's a sizable portion of the workforce doing this,
Wow.
Dr. Mahdavi.
Wow.
And
Is that a new stat on how many people are
up
leaving
to,
the work?
yes. Stat I've read in the past few months
Yeah, I
on
see.
this
Yeah.
great resignation.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
and because, again, people are miserable at their jobs. And do you want to stay at a job that you're just miserable? It sinks you down. It just takes you down and just affects your entire body. It infects your mental health. It affects your physical health, and it affects your spiritual health.
Absolutely.
It just makes you feel, for many people, it makes them feel empty inside. So I want to spend the second half. We'll bring up a couple of other topics, but I also want to bring up some more questions. I'm
Okay.
currently streaming on Clubhouse. Hello again, for those on Clubhouse. If anyone has a question, I just want to let you know before we begin with questions that you are on. I am streaming currently on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter live, and you can get the recording afterwards. So just want to make sure that you are, when you ask a question, you are being recorded. So, is there anyone that wants to ask a question to my guest today, Dr. Atousa Mahdavi? Anyone on Clubhouse? Okay. So far, no questions.
No
It's okay.
questions. Okay.
It's okay, because if there's any that come up on, and I'm glad that Leopold had asked that question, because that was an outstanding question about
Yeah.
that scientific American piece.
Yeah.
Want to ask you about your upcoming book, Holy You. Um, when is it coming out, and what is the book about?
Yeah. So the book is about the a holistic lifestyle towards a disease-free life, towards prevention, and a pharma-free life. And I started writing it, in fact, before the pandemic. And I, in fact, was supposed to publish it on Amazon last year. But because other priorities came up, and with the pandemic, also some of my priorities changed, etc., I basically dragged out what I needed to do to finish it. I have wrote the entire book, is already done. It's been edited and formatted. I just need to do my final review and send it back to the publisher so they can put it on Amazon. So I don't want to jinx it, because I kept saying this year, oh, it'll be out in spring. Then I said summer. Now it looks like it'll be fall or winter, which is, fall or winter, it'll be out.
And I am looking forward to that book.
Yes.
It's going to be, I mean, with everything that you do and have done, and I've been promoting, and please go to yourvitalitydoctor.com. The site is incredible. Let me I will bring that up in a second, but okay. I want to ask you something that I have only and I've been having trouble saying this word. Okay, Ayurvedic.
Yes.
Ayurvedic yoga. What is Ayurvedic yoga, and what is the difference between that and regular yoga?
I see. Okay, so basically, Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. It's basically, Ayur means life. Ayur means life. Veda means knowledge. So Ayurveda means knowledge of life. it's the sister science of yoga in a sense that the principles of Ayurvedic medicine are in the same textbooks, the original, like ancient texts of yoga. And there are 4 ancient texts of yoga. And Ayurveda came out of 2 of those textbooks, Rig Veda and Atharva Veda. And so those books are the, books from like thousands of years ago on yoga. And Ayurveda it was extracted out of those 2 books because it was the science or knowledge of life for the yogis. But if we go back to the history of yoga, pretty much at the time, the yogis, it wasn't just far and few in between. There were like most people on the planet were yogis, apparently.
Okay.
And so it was to keep the yogi healthy and free from ailments and imbalances, so the yogi can live a full-fledged life that will ultimately lead to their liberation and awakening and enlightenment.
Okay.
So the science or knowledge of life, but it was about medicine, meaning traditional medicine, using diet, using food as medicine, using lifestyle and daily routine and self-care rituals, plus herbs. And in fact, Ayurveda had a branch that did surgery. We're talking about thousands of years ago. Sushruta Samhita is the book. Sushruta Samhita is the book of Ayurveda, the textbook of Ayurveda that is surgery, on surgeries. And in fact, there are pictures of the old surgical instruments that the Ayurvedic doctors used to, let's say, take a tumor out or to sew something or anything. And so it was a full-fledged medicine of the ancient India. And of course, the origin of yoga is in India, and so is the origin of Ayurveda is in India. And so when we say it's the sister science of yoga, is because it came out of the same textbook of yoga. And Charaka Samhita is the main book. The most classical text of Ayurveda is called Charaka Samhita. And those are the extractions out of those 2 texts of yoga, Atharva Veda and Rig Veda. And so it's a profound traditional medicine. Some say that it is also the origin of Chinese medicine. And because it's ancient, it's as old as yoga. And depending on who you talk to, they say yoga is as old as 8,000 years or 10,000 or 15,000 years. And so it's an old tradition and very powerful. It's holistic. So again, it will look at your lifestyle, daily routine, your diet, foods, your thought processes. So even when we examine, like the examination of Ayurveda, like the way we examine, it has a few components: structural or physical examination, physiological examination, psychological examination, and pulse analysis or nadi pariksha, and tongue analysis. So these are the components of an exam. Yeah. And in older ages, in older times of Ayurveda, the Ayurvedic doctor would also look at someone's urine. They would look at someone's feces, because that would give them a wealth of knowledge about someone's physiology.
Amazing you say that, because one person that has been very outspoken about the very last thing you said about feces, urine, and the stomach and colon region, in reference to not just with current ailments, but just in general, and just having an overall good health and biome.
Yeah, microbiome.
Dr. Sabine Hazan has been talking about this and she has a book which I can't say the name because it's I'm trying to be PG, but she has written a book about this, and it's just so key. People don't even realize that this is all part of the entire body. It's not just certain elements. It's not just the conscious elements. The subconscious, the internal part is so important, if not more important.
Absolutely. And in Ayurveda, in fact, we say that the origin of disease is the gut. That, the origin of disease and illness is the gut. And any good Ayurvedic doctor or practitioner will start to fix your digestive system before they want to do anything else. You know, it could be done tandem and parallel, but digestive system is key. And the microbiome, like you said, which is a new thing that, you know, everybody is talking about, etc., which is very important. And you probably have heard that you have more neurotransmitters in your gut. You have more neurotransmitters in your gut than you have in your brain.
Yes.
And that is why when people say, I have a gut feeling, you know, I have these butterflies, or I feel it here in my gut.
Well, the one person that is famous for talking about digestive system and gut health has been David Perlmutter with Grain Brain.
Interesting.
And he talks specifically about inflammation in the brain that is caused by the digestive system.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, digestive health is key.
I'll go further. I lost 5 family members passed away, older relatives that passed away from Alzheimer's disease. One of my 5 uncles, aunts, and their sister, who sadly just recently passed away in June, she ended up having severe celiac. And it was incredible how she never developed Alzheimer's, but she developed severe celiac. Whereas, and again, living in an Italian household, what do you eat? Processed, you know, bread. You eat pasta.
Pasta, yeah.
Everything carbs. Just everything that would long term cause inflammation up here. And it's just incredible to hear with yoga and holistic medicine how going back centuries and millennia.
Exactly. And so
Eastern Asian culture. Go ahead.
Very true. So that just reminded me. So you said, what is the difference between yoga therapy and yoga? That was a question you asked. And then I went on explaining what is Ayurveda. So Ayurvedic yoga therapy, basically, you have to have the knowledge of Ayurveda. And once you have that knowledge, you determine your clients' or patients' constitution, which is their unique, inherent bioelemental tendencies, and also figuring out their imbalances, and accordingly design their specific and their individualized yoga sequence for that, yoga practice for that. So that is the difference between yoga, that you just walk into a yoga studio and you just follow the instructions of a yoga teacher and everybody's doing the same thing. With Ayurvedic yoga therapy, and the practice is sequenced by very individualized processes and practices according to the individual's constitution and imbalances. So it's a very, specific therapeutic yoga.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the main difference. So not every yoga teacher knows Ayurveda, so they can give you Ayurvedic yoga therapy sequences.
Do you need a special license for it?
Yeah, you need a special training and
Special-
license for that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, because another term that I've never heard before today is Hatha.
Okay. Yes.
Hatha. What is Hatha? It
Yeah.
says that you are a Hatha yoga master. It's probably,
Yeah.
I know it's all correlated, but I'm just curious. I've never heard that word before, and I'm just curious what it is.
Yeah. So Hatha is the most original form
Hatha.
of yoga. Hatha. Hatha.
Hatha. Okay. Hatha.
Hatha.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hatha is the most original form of yoga, the most traditional yoga, the most classical in India. And every other form of yoga branched out of Hatha yoga. And Ha means sun, Ta means moon. So it's balancing sun and moon energy, or masculine, feminine energy, yin, yang, balancing the dualities and bringing to union the dualities, and bringing to union mind, body, etc. Um, and basically, Hatha Yoga, or the which is from also known as Raja Yoga, it's an 8-limb yoga. It's basically a philosophy based on 8 principles. And the 8 principles of Hatha Yoga are yamas and niyamas. And so the practitioner should live a life that is introspective and also in accordance with certain universal moral laws, that you do not do harm to others. So how you conduct yourself internally and how you conduct yourself externally. And ahimsa is one of the biggest examples, non-injurious to yourself and to others. It's one thing. And so what you eat, how you think, how you emote, how you treat yourself, this body as a temple, how you treat others, these are yamas and niyamas, to do's and not to do's. And then these are the first 2 foundational uh, pieces of it. Then the third limb of it is asana. Now, asana is the yoga which is practiced today in the West. So that's only the third limb of yoga, Hatha yoga, which is the physical postures that you learn in yoga studios, etc. So that's the third principle. The fourth principle is pranayama, and pranayama is breath work or breath
Ah,
exercises. Yeah.
I've seen.
Breathe.
I've
Yeah.
I've done that myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a must when you're addressing mind, when you're addressing anxiety, depression, stress. That breath work becomes, and I can explain that why, becomes absolutely paramount to basically your life, to make sure that your anxiousness, your stress is handled better, etc. So pranayama is the fourth limb. Then pratyahara is the next limb. Pratyahara is to basically securing your 5 senses from the external stimulus of the world. So not see, which is something that is completely not done or missed, because if you're constantly on your devices and you're constantly bombarded by stimulation, news, sound, voice, images of the external world, then you will never have you will never have a mind that is in union with the universal intelligence or with your own higher self. You're always divided and dissected in so many different pieces that to bring them, you need to unite them. Otherwise, you're dissociated, scattered, not in union with your own true nature. And that is um, basically the result of not being in pratyahara. Pratyahara means to secure your senses from constant stimulation by your five senses from the external world. So that's pratyahara. Then there is dharana. Then dharana means not that you brought all of your attention. Once you gathered and united all of these five senses to you, now focus them in one point. Direct all of your attention in one point. And that's dharana, one pointed focus. And if you look around and there is so much attention deficit disorder, and ADHD, ADD, etc., lack of focus and concentration in the millennials and the newer generations, etc., as a result of being scattered and the mind all over the place, not having that one pointed focus, which is dharana, which is the next step below dhyana, meditation. So meditation is a hierarchy of all of these steps. Dhyana is the seventh stepping stone. So you had yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, meditation. Finally, you gathered all of your senses and you made them one pointed focus. And then now you sit with that one pointed focus for minutes and hours, and now you taste meditation. You know what it is to be meditative.
There you go.
And then the eighth limb, which is the ultimate, is samadhi, which is enlightenment or liberation.
I've heard that. I've heard it.
Yeah, samadhi. So this is an eighth limb yoga of Hatha yoga, which is the most ancient form of yoga, Hatha.
And how many years, just curious, how many years does that go back? Does that go back 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years and beyond?
At least, yes. Yeah.
And is that possibly and quite possibly because that is part of Eastern Asian culture? It's probably the reason why when you look at I don't want to say mortality, but lifespans. The longest lifespans are among Eastern Asian culture because it's not just their diet. There's plenty of people I know that have incredible diets, but they don't live as long because they don't have that intangible of mind, body, and soul.
And a practical approach towards it. A practical approach, which is yoga, breath work, meditation, introspection, which is meditation is about introspection.
Right.
And you sit, and the yogi, everybody who can be on this path can sit and be introspective and find that true self that is one with God. Being in that connection with the divine is what keeps you hopeful and faithful and loving and nurturing and nurtured, and ultimately have a long life, which, there are stories of yogis that lived, 200 years and, 100 and something years. And
And this is not out of the ordinary. I mean, as I said, you go to the Bible and you hear about, you read plenty of stories in the Bible about those who have lived for centuries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Moses
absolutely.
is the classic example I remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just, again, mind, body, spirit, mind, body, and spirit. And I want to promote your website. Once again, I'm going to put that up. yourvitalitydoctor.com. I'm going to put it up on the screen. It is a very, very beautiful website, and Your Vitality Doctor. And you have an area here on the top right, schedule appointment.
Yes.
So how could people reach out to you? You're in Southern California, correct?
Yeah, but with Ayurveda and functional medicine, I have been for actually a few years now. It's not just since the pandemic. I have been doing telemedicine. So there are people that are in other states that also reach out and will do telemedicine telemedicine. And
Oh, so
of
you're
course,
able to
on the
do
same
that.
website.
You're able to go the telemedicine route.
Yeah. With Ayurveda and functional medicine, yes. Because the only part that I won't be able to do with Ayurvedic medicine is the pulse. The structural can be done, on Zoom because it's a lot of observation. Physiological and psychological, it's a lot of conversation and QA. I'm asking a lot of questions. That's with Ayurveda. And with functional medicine, yeah, it's the consultation is on Zoom. They receive a prescription for blood work, and they can go in any state. The lab that I use is LabCorp, and
Here's
they're
a
everywhere.
question for you. What blood work do you take?
It's a comprehensive blood work. It's 52 blood markers.
Okay.
52 blood markers. And I have my own prescription pad with certain codes on it. And any LabCorp, they have me in their system. They know exactly what are the 52 blood markers to run. And it involves most of the panels. It involves the kidney panel, liver panel, cholesterol or lipid panel, anemia panel, the white blood cells, red blood cells, CBC, metabolic panel, the thyroid panel, inflammatory markers, which is very important nowadays. Everybody should, check that.
I just recently had an entire thyroid panel. This was back in February. And
Awesome.
I was fortunate that it came out really, really good. And the reason why I had the panel was because with the most recent weight loss, I was feeling cold so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what happens is when you shock the system, when you shock your system by losing 100 pounds, it causes things to happen to your body. Yeah. And so I get cold so quickly, it's not even funny. And yeah. I wear a sweatshirt in the summertime now because I just become so it gets, for me and my body, it gets cold. But however, I found that every single marker of my thyroid was right in the middle of the normal range.
Yeah.
It was really incredible. Plus, my mom has issues with her thyroid, so that's the other reason why I decided to get it a thorough panel. And again, you don't just get the, what is it called, the THC, I think it is called. No. That's only one.
TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. That's the one that
TSH. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, TSH. Yeah, that's the one that most doctors just order that one and that's it. But you have to do T3, T4, T7.
I did 5 or 6
T3,
panels.
T3 free, T4 free. Yeah.
Did them all.
Good.
And it came out very, very good.
Awesome.
And I was very fortunate. But I'm due. I keep saying this. I'm due for blood work very, very shortly, and I have to get it done.
Okay.
Do you also? I was going to ask you. Do you also check like vitamin D, vitamin B?
Yeah. Vitamin D. Vitamin D3, it's included in the 52 blood markers. I can check B12, that's an extra, so I could check any other extra lab work that I deem necessary based on the consultation. But the 52 is a must. And there is a difference in functional medicine blood analysis than the regular, lab work that your doctors send you to. Because in functional medicine, the style of my practice, I use an optimal reference range. An optimal reference range is different from the clinical reference range that your medical doctors do. With the optimal reference range, we're looking at a normal reference range that is obtained from healthy individuals that are doing the lab work. We take the average of those healthy, no symptoms individuals, and that is our normal or optimal range. With the regular labs or lab work that your MD or regular labs do, their normal reference ranges are the entire population that goes to them, like they take a sample of that population, even when they're not feeling well. Even when they're like, so this is the sample of population, they're sent there for varieties of reasons, and they take the mean average of that, and that becomes their normal reference range. And many of my patients who do the functional medicine blood analysis with me, they tell me that, they have these symptoms. Many of them may be hypothyroid symptoms. Let's just look at that as an example. And the doctor ran their thyroid panel and said everything is normal. Then they do the same blood work, but with comparing to the optimal reference ranges, they're not optimal. They're not in the optimal reference range.
The other problem is I have noticed is that certain panels, it depends on the specific lab on
Absolutely.
what normal is. And that is a problem. I don't understand why they do that. It should just be, there should just be a specific normal range. Isn't there a specific normal range no?
Yeah. So here is the thing. Most labs are controlling what is normal to them. Is there a certain range of standards? Yeah, I mean, you could take, my textbook on, laboratory analysis, and there are reference ranges, but every lab has their own, like you said, because they usually are checking their own averages, and that becomes their normal. But optimal reference ranges have been the same even when you look at normal reference ranges 40 years ago.
I see.
Because the more people have become more sick, the more reference ranges became wider and wider and wider. And so, with the optimal, so when I show results to my patients, so this is their results. Then there is a column that has optimal ranges, and then there is a column that has the reference ranges. So when I show them the results, I say, oh, okay, see, here is your, let's say, TSH, and it's normal if we compare it to the clinical range. But look, if you compare it to the optimal range, it's really not.
No, right.
And so it's low or higher or lower, etc. And that happens quite a lot. A lot of different, in fact, it's interesting. Lately, I've tested a couple of my patients who got the vaccinations, and they sent me their previous labs, like let's say from last year before they got, vaccinated, etc. And there was a interesting change in their platelets counts and things like that. So it's really important that you keep that in check, like white blood cells, lymphocytes.
Well, I mean, my platelet count is naturally low, which is why I'm not, getting vaccinated. So
you're not.
No, I'm not. I mean, because my platelet count, I mean, I've had the chronic condition for over 25 years.
Right.
So I have to be careful what I put in my body, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And those who do take it, the vaccines, etc., they definitely need to get those, counts regularly.
Yes. And interesting, I did see a study a few months ago that vitamin D levels took a tumble post-vaccination. Took an incredible tumble, which is really strange of why a vaccination would do something like that. And I agree with you. I think someone that decides to get vaccinated or is especially recently vaccinated, should get their panels checked out immediately to make sure that there's nothing severely wrong short term.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And again, we're not and we're not saying on here, and I have to say this for educational purposes. This is for educational purposes, and we're not saying here don't get the vaccines or get the vaccines. What we're saying is get your blood work checked out.
Yeah.
If post-vaccination, you should do it pre-vaccination a few months prior, and then post-vaccination, you should also get it checked out. Because if something does develop, then at least you're one step ahead of the game of, okay, something has developed. I've got to take care of it right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, while I have a few more minutes, and I want to thank you so much for coming on today,
My
uh,
pleasure.
Dr. Mahdavi, and I would love to have you come back on when the book comes, when you have either just about finished with the book or the book comes out. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to your book, Holy You.
Yeah. Thank you. I will come back for sure.
What are some of the just basic things that someone that doesn't follow holistic medicine, but stressed out, feeling down, feeling depressed, or could be even as far as someone who's very ill from whatever ailment, what would be just something that would be healthy to do in
Mhm.
reference to a holistic approach, just as a starter?
Yeah. So, one thing that is really important for everybody to do, and of course, when it comes to ailments and people who are already suffering from a condition or a disease or diagnosis, my approach is very individualized. It's not cookie cutter approach, it's not one size doesn't fit all. But there are certain things that everybody can do. And that is, it is really important to have a set routine, which means when you wake up, when you go to bed, when you eat your meals, when you empty your bowels, and exercise activity or yoga, whatever it is, like your physical activity, that is routined within an hour from, of deviation, an hour of deviation from this side or that side. But one of the main causes of imbalances is a variable daily routines. Like sometimes you have breakfast, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have it at this time, sometimes you have it 3 hours later. Sometimes you have lunch at this time, sometimes you skip, you know, and sometimes you go to bed at 2 in the morning, sometimes you go to bed at 12 midnight. And
That was on purpose because on Clubhouse rooms, I have a tendency of keeping them open until 5 o'clock in the morning.
I know I was in a couple of times in your
Yes.
room, and I
Oh, yeah.
noticed.
Oh, yes. That is the and they are never a dull moment. I will say that. However, it's interesting because normally for me, because I've always been a night owl. I used to work overnights for years. I used to always go to bed after 4 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't wake up until say 12:30 in the afternoon. So like I'm a nocturnal person. I'm just used to being up and energized at night.
Yeah,
And I have been recommended actually. And when I lost 100 pounds, I actually exercised at like 10 o'clock at night.
interesting.
I was
Mhm.
exercising at say 10 p.m. because that's the time that I feel most energized between
Yeah,
10
most people
and
do.
1 a.m.
Yeah, so let me tell you,
Very,
a
very
secret.
different than the average person, of course.
Yeah, there is a secret, Ayurvedic secret.
Go ahead.
So the day uh, in Ayurveda is divided in uh, to three bio-elemental rhythms. And in Ayurveda, we have the bio-elemental rhythms of Vata, which is the elements of air and space. We have Pitta, which is the elements of fire and water. We have Kapha, which is the elements of earth and water. These are the different constitutions in Ayurveda, or different doshas. So each individual has different percentages of each one of these three, which means different elements, the five elements in the universe: earth, water, fire, air, and space, um, play themselves differently in each individual. So one of the aims of Ayurveda is to determine what are your most dominant elements and accordingly treat you individually based on those elements. But so is the day, and even our lifespan has their own dosha. Each duration, like each phases of your life. So when we're kids, like we until the age of 20, we are in the kapha time of life, earth and water time of life. Then we enter more or less until our 50s, we are in the pitta time of life, fire and water. We're active, we're achievers, we want to do this, we have visions, we have this and that, and that's fire and water. And then as we get older than 50, 60 and older, it's the vata time of life, air and space. And that is why a lot of people, as they get older, they start to get smaller because air and space doesn't have any substance to it. They eat less hungry, especially when they reach 70s, 80s, and things like that. And so the day is also divided into kapha, pitta, and vata. So from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Actually, Doc, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
What happened was I ended up having a brief outage on my end.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do, and my great apologies on that.
No problem.
What I want you to talk about is go back from the beginning and talk about the three parts of, and you're going to make me say Ayurveda.
Yeah.
I want you to explain that one more time for the audience, and I greatly apologize about that.
No problem at all. So should I
start over again on that part?
Okay. So in Ayurveda, we have three main constitutions. Now, each constitution is comprised of two elements, being that Ayurveda and yoga says, and so does, Chinese medicine, that the entire universe is made up of 5 elements, including the human system: earth, water, fire, air, and space. Each two of these can join and form a constitution. So when air and space join together, they form the vata constitution or dosha. When fire and water get together, they join pitta constitution. Earth and water form the kapha constitution. So one of the main goals of Ayurveda is to determine your constitution, which is your natural state of harmony with your own nature, and accordingly advise, this is a good kind of lifestyle for you, this is a good daily routine, these are the foods that will benefit you most, these are the kind of yoga postures that benefit you most, these are the main breath work and meditations that would benefit you most. And also, each imbalance has its own bioelemental rhythms as well. Like anxiety, it's a function of air and space. So when your air and space is accentuated out of balance, there is anxiety. But like people also who are cold is also a quality of air and space.
Right.
And so imbalances are also determined. What are the doshic or constitutional tendency of the imbalance, and the individuals is accordingly treated for their imbalance and their normal constitution. But also the phases of life are also divided into these bioelemental plays. So the early stages of life, from childhood to, let's say, 20, you're in the kapha time of life, earth and water. Right. So that's why, usually kids are so meaty and like, you could grab their cheeks and their arms are like, chubby. And, even though like when they grow up or whatever, maybe they're thin, but when they're little, they're still, like that. So they're very earth, watery kind of thing. And then in like up to the age of 50, then, meaning from like your 20 to 50, it's pitta time of life. Pitta is fire and water. Okay. And one of the qualities of fire is
Fire
uh,
sounds like energy.
energy, go getting, achieving, leadership, um, acquiring, vision, because you're light. Yeah. The light of the fire is what gives you a vision. Oh, I want to do this. I want to write a book. I want to create a business. That's the vision that you have, right? And a lot of like that kind of energy of go getting, that type of thing. And then towards the end of the life, meaning 50, 60 and above, it's vata, air and space.
I see.
And yeah. And that's why like a lot of people as they get older, they become minuter and minuter and minuter, like
I see.
shorter, less weight. And a lot of people starting in their 80s, for the most part, they eat less, like their attachments to
Very
food,
natural. Well,
very.
it's multiple reasons. One,
Yeah.
and I've noticed this with many of my older relatives as they've waned in their later years of life, is when you don't have that connectness, when your loved ones and your friends that you've been around for so long have passed on, then you become alone, and then
Mhm.
the whole isolationism comes in.
Yeah, which is a societal thing, it's a society, because in older times, how like grandparents used to, when they were really old, they would live with the family, like especially in
Exactly,
Eastern
extended
culture.
families.
Yeah. Also, like in Italian culture, I think, some of those Hispanic
Four
culture.
generations would live with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's also another byproduct of like industrialized modern, postmodern living, that they are this isolated, and nursing homes and this kind of thing, right? And but naturally there is a tendency for the elderly to, they become more detached from things. It's a natural tendency, but that doesn't mean they want to be alone. It's just
By
that,
no means.
no, by no means. But they're less detached to food, to maybe even people. Like maybe they, they're getting ready. They're getting ready to transition, right? But that by all means doesn't mean they want to be isolated and left alone. But you know what I mean? Like
I,
their appetite and stuff is less, and that type of thing. So anyway, so that's water time a lot, life. But also the daytime, the 24 hours
okay.
in one day, is divided into vata, pitta, kapha. So from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is pitta time of the night. So here's what happens. According to Ayurveda, you should be in bed before 10 p.m. because you are from 6 to 10, you're in kapha time, earth and water, which is heavy, which is stagnant, lazy, wants to sleep. That's when you need to go to sleep. Coincidentally, the sun, in the old days when there wasn't electricity, about 2 hours after the sun went down, we used to go to sleep. And that's our circadian rhythm as well. Our circadian rhythm in our DNA is designed by the energy of the sun and the earth and the planetary shifts.
Right.
Pineal gland works the same way, melatonin. So melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, starts to go up at around 9 p.m. That means your body is getting ready to go to bed. Kapha time of the day. But as soon as you hit 10 p.m., now you're going to Pitta time of the night, which is energy, which is fire, which is creativity.
Right.
And that is why a lot of artists and people that are creators, etc., suddenly they get a boost of energy from 10 to 12. It peaks at 12 midnight, then it
Yes.
starts to go down. And so the key is to, but also from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the morning, 10 a.m. to 2
Okay.
p.m. Is Pitta time of day. And that's when you should be doing all of your creativity and most of your work.
Sorry, say that one more time. You're talking
10
about
a.m.
from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
It's 2 cycles. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is Pitta. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. again is Pitta.
Right. What's weird is for me, it's reverse. So for me, I feel so motivated and working from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Right.
And
And
then I
that,
feel sluggish and I'm still in bed from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Part of it is what you conditioned yourself. Like I used to be like that.
Yeah.
I used to be like that. About 12 years ago is when I changed that habit. And honestly, now I am not being creative at 10 p.m. I want to be in bed at around 10:30, 11 p.m. So it's also about habit making. So, but if you talk to most people, once they eat dinner, and if they start to relax, most people start to feel sleepy. But
Gotcha.
if you stay up and if you stay active, that will go away. The sleepiness will go away. You'll get busy. You get to, do stuff. But circadian rhythm also, 9 p.m., melatonin is going up. Your deepest sleep is from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. This is scientifically proven. Circadian rhythm, the hormones, melatonin.
Interesting.
Your deepest sleep is from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Every hour of sleep, and all of this is also in my book, Holy You. Every hour of sleep before midnight equals 2 hours past midnight.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is why people who go to bed at 9 or 10, they can easily wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. But if they go to bed at 1 a.m., even waking up at 8 a.m. is difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, because that 2 hours, let's say from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. in the morning, is 2 hours, but that equals 4 hours past
Wow.
midnight. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Incredible.
so this is, and in the Chinese medicine, also there is the Chinese clock that your body starts rejuvenating when you are resting from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Gotcha.
So different organ systems go through their detoxification and rejuvenation.
Wow. And that is definitely something I would love to have another conversation with you on about sleep. But Dr. Mahdavi, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
And I wish you all the best with the book that you're I guess finishing writing up and going to be coming out very soon.
Yes.
The book that is out now, and I'll post that one more time. If you want a link to Dr. Mahdavi's chapter, The Expert's Cure, you go to yourvitalitydoctor.com/free-e-book. And the book coming out very soon is Holy You, which you will be able to get on Amazon. Dr. Mahdavi, thank you so much for once again for coming on today. And
My pleasure.
and I thank everyone between the platforms, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, as well as on Clubhouse. Thank you so much for listening today. Hope you have a great evening and all the best. All right. Bye-bye now.